I'm currently taking the PPE Integration 3 course myself, and the readings definitely can be very interesting, but they can also be quite dense because they are primary sources, as you mentioned. Right. Would you have any tips and tricks for students around how to manage the readings, especially sometimes some students can be very good at connecting those to contemporary issues, but sometimes others might struggle a little bit in that as well. So yeah, any tips and tricks on that?
Right. I think there are two things. I think it's really great that you raised that, and obviously lucky to have the interview with somebody who has intimate knowledge of the course I'm convening. But I think there are two things. You know, the one thing is that as historians, we tend to be very skeptical about presentist arguments. So even though I'm delighted when people are trying to think about contemporary connections, what I'm really trying to get people to do in this course is to think about ideas in historical context. And so, you know, I want you to be reflecting on the material and thinking about that which is time independent. But I also want you to think about limitations and kind of imagine the world around a text at that particular time. So if people aren't connecting things to contemporary world, but they're, you know, the next step for me, the sort of higher step that I hope you'll be able to take is connecting it to the world around the economists who are writing and the issues that are germane to them. One of the things that I try to make sure, I think that students can do in their readings is, you know, going to secondary sources that can help clarify some of that reading if they're struggling with it. So Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy is a good place. I actually have a view on Wikipedia that Wikipedia is helpful, you know, as a supplement, not as a substitute. You know, I think it's fine. It's a fairly high quality. That's not to say that I will accept copying and pasting of Wikipedia on people's responses. But I think most importantly is to read things multiple times, read slowly, highlight, and to ask questions. I mean, whether it's Wattle forums or sending an email to the course email address or bringing a question to tutorial, you know, or seeking out an appointment with me or with the tutor. You know, there's also the resource of the peer group on something like a Wattle discussion, right? In that it's unlikely that the question that you have, it's a very large course, 140 students, unlikely the question you have is not something that other people don't have. And that brings me to sort of my final point, which is that you know, thinking about doing readings in groups, and you know, coming to tutorials perhaps after having maybe chatted for 10-15 minutes with somebody else about this reading.
I think those strategies are really useful, and it's good for students, I think, to hear from a course convener sort of the ways that they manage the reading, but also how they can, you know, the students can also help manage their reading as well. You mentioned earlier that obviously, like many courses at the ANU, that this course is online, and some courses, I think, you know, some courses could possibly be completely online for the remainder of the year, but also potentially next year as well. Are there things that students need to keep in mind with online learning, and how can they make it a productive experience in your course?
Something that, in terms of the usage of space, you know, when you're online or you're working from home, something is to kind of operate your Zoom or your class in a space that is conducive for working and concentration. And also, I think to set aside, so two things. I mean, I always ask that my students show their video and audio, as it allows me to see them, it allows them to see each other. And I think that's sort of a minimum that we can do in terms of Zoom etiquette. And the other thing is that, you know, to make sure that, you know, food, drink, those sorts of things, except for maybe water, that's kind of kept to a minimum, because I think that, you know, that it's the easiest way for us to kind of lose concentration. But there are some small things that we can do that can go a long way. I think that, you know, the sort of making sure that we demarcate space well and put ourselves in a good frame of mind, and observing certain kinds of basic rules of etiquette can help with